Welcome to The Right Stuff, your channel for all things on the writing craft. As you probably noticed, I've got a little bit of a different setup today, and I borrowed a mic from the missus and was able to record using some software on my computer, so I don't have to worry about storage space, and I have decent sound quality. But the trade-off is that my laptop webcam just doesn't have good quality. So there's a bit of a trade-off, but I am looking into getting a better quality webcam. So again, this is going to be part of the series, Getting Your Start as a Writer. So we're going to continue on, probably just for this video. I might have one more up my sleeve, but we're just going to leave it at this for now, and see what happens. This video is going to be a little bit different. I thought while we're on the series of Getting Your Start as a Writer, it could be helpful to identify basic elements of a story. Now, as I'm talking about this stuff, it's not my intention to insult your intelligence, because there's an excellent chance that you already know this stuff. My goal is just to lay out these items so that you can be thinking about it as you're starting your journey as a writer. More of a bringing it to the forefront of your attention kind of thing, rather than just me telling you things that you already know. I'm still doing these videos from the intention of talking to someone who's getting ready to sit down and start the first novel. So again, I don't mean to insult you. If you're watching this, I just want to lay these out as a point of reference. So keep in mind also that I'm just doing a drive-by on these points, but I'll likely dive deeper into them in later videos. So, what are some basic elements of story? Excuse me. First of all, characters. Every story has characters. No matter what it's about, no matter when it takes place, no matter where the setting is, your story will have characters. Even if your story is about an inanimate rock, that inanimate rock is a character in your story. So you also are going to have kind of a hero and villain, and or antagonist and protagonist. Yes, these terms differ slightly, but they are very similar. A protagonist is generally the hero of the story, someone who the story focuses on and whom your readers will be rooting for. Technically, there can be multiple protagonists, and I would even argue supporting characters, kind of those who are tagging along with your main character for the ride, can be counted as a protagonist. In the same way, there can be multiple antagonists. Characters are things that are hindering your hero from getting what he or she wants. Now, this can be different from the villain, in that the villain is definitely one of the antagonists and the main antagonist, but the villain isn't necessarily the only antagonist. Any story you have, the hero is going to meet a multitude of obstacles, and those obstacles are generally considered antagonists. You could even argue that an antagonist doesn't have to be a person. Okay, next we have setting. So where does your story take place? Before you even start writing, you have to consider where the story is taking place. You know, is it even on Earth? If you're writing fantasy, what's the name of your world? If it is on Earth, your when will be a part of the setting. Technically, if you have a made-up world, your when will be part of the setting as well if you're referencing different times or eras in your world, but it won't be perhaps as relevant as talking about specific times on Earth, since your physical setting will often be directly influenced by the time period of your work. You know, setting for an ancient a story about ancient Rome, for instance, your time period is going to matter, as opposed to a setting in modern day when your time period is going to look a lot different, because it directly is influenced by technology, architecture, all of that kind of thing. All right, plot. Different writers are going to have different viewpoints on plot. Even famous authors have different viewpoints on plot. So even so, you can think of plot as the answer to what happens in your story. Again, I'm not going to go into all the details and kind of intricacies of what plot means and why some people view plot as kind of not necessarily a bad thing, but almost as a unnecessary thing to focus. Anyways, so what happens in your story? What does your hero want? How will he or she get it? Now, there's a few resources that can be very helpful in understanding plot and how your story fits into plot. First, there's Freytag's Pyramid or Freytag's Triangle. This is kind of the classic structure of storytelling that goes exposition, rising climax, action, falling action, and resolution. There's also Haig's 6-stage plot structure and 7-point story structure, which I believe is credited to Dan Wells. Just take a look, like Google these things and take a look and see which one kind of best fits your needs for your story. Then use it to kind of help guide your story. It can be helpful. All right, and conflict. So any story you have to have conflict. As we talked about in characters, the hero is almost always going to have, well, your character will have things standing in their way every time. Conflict creates tension, which drives the story forward. It engages your audience. It tests your hero. You know, if Frodo started out from the Shire and just rolled right into Mordor, had an elevator up Mount Doom, and dropped an innate piece of metal into the lava, then left, that'd be an incredibly boring story, and you'd have never heard of J.R.R. Tolkien. You have to have conflict. Resolution. Again, in order for your story to be complete, your hero has to reach that end of their journey. It doesn't necessarily mean that they get what they want, although it often does. If you're writing a tragedy, for instance, the hero likely won't get what they want, but the story will still end with some sort of resolution. The main plot of the story is going to be tied up and completed. If you're writing a series, obviously there's going to be subplots that aren't tied up from book to book, or maybe there's going to be an overarching plot that won't be tied up until the final book of your series. For instance, Voldemort doesn't die in Harry Potter until the final book. However, the plot within this particular book must have a resolution. When the character set, what that character set out to do, get, or become at the beginning of this book must be accomplished by the end of this book, if that makes sense. Okay, then themes. Every story needs a theme. Themes are kind of a more ambiguous story element, but they're no less useful in guiding the story. Think of your theme as the essence of your story. What kind of experience are you trying to give your audience? Mine, for instance, in the Ivory Chronicles, is redemption. As I'm writing my books, I'm showing that even though people make mistakes or make bad choices, there's always an opportunity to become something better and come back from those mistakes. You know, that's my theme. It's like a soundbite, just a short little summation of your book. All right, then there's point of view, more commonly known as POV, and it refers to kind of who's telling the story. Now, as you write, your POV, it's generally accepted that your POV has to be consistent, right? You can't have first person and then suddenly switch to third person. It's going to confuse your reader. I have seen this done right. Diana Gabaldon has done this in one of her books in the Outlander series, and it worked. It was odd, but it worked for some reason. But anyways, let's kind of get into this. But so if you don't know, first person is writing from the point of view that uses the pronouns I, me, myself, etc. You're writing as the main character, as if the main character is telling the story, him or herself, to the readers. Next, you have second person. This is used least of all because it's really difficult to pull off well. And this is where your story is written using you, your, yourself. It's almost like the author is telling the story of what's happening to you, the reader. Now, I have next to zero experience with this, so I probably can't really explain it well, which is why I'm not going to go too deep into it. Third person is perhaps the most common because the author is telling the story from the outside perspective using he, she, it, and so on. There are some subsets of each type of perspective that I encourage you to look into and kind of research, but the most often discussed is within third person. Third person is usually done as either third limited or third omniscient. Third omniscient is when you tell the story from the perspective of an all-knowing narrator who can tell you anything and everything about the character, setting, and plot in your story during any point of time, past, present, or future. Third person limited is when you tell a story through a particular character. This is what I write in. When this happens, you only know what that character knows. The character can make observations and deductions about events or other people, but not know what someone else is thinking or feeling, or know what some other character far away is doing, which could be done as third omniscient. So for instance, for third limited, if you write as the character Jim, you can't suddenly say Jim's sister Jane felt angry at Jim's comment, but didn't show it. So Jim wouldn't know that unless Jane actually showed that she was angry, or she told Jim that she was angry. So that's kind of the limitations of third person limited, which kind of makes sense that it would be called limited. You can also write from different characters' POVs if you need to tell a different part of the story from another character's perspective. I have, in my current work in progress, I have maybe about 3 or 4 POVs. So I'm telling the story through 3 or 4 characters. You don't want to get too many POVs because it's going to get jumbled and messy for the reader, but that's for another video, diving into that kind of stuff. All right, so anyways, that's kind of it. If you have discussion points on these topics of basic elements of story, or think I missed one, or think maybe that one doesn't even belong, leave a comment. Let's talk about it. I'd like to know your thoughts and your opinions as well. And if you want to support what I do here, there will be a Patreon link in the description of the video. Thanks for joining me here on The Right Stuff. I hope this particular video has helped you and given you some useful information. If it did, please like the video. If you're looking for help and tips, please subscribe to the channel, as I plan on continuing putting out more videos on different topics each week. I kind of missed last week, but I'm getting back into a regular rotation. And most important of all, please share this video. Discuss these topics and show them to a friend who's looking for specific writing tips and help, or show it to a friend, a writer friend who maybe thinks differently, and you guys can kind of discuss it and see what you all think. But if you're simply here and watching the video, man, just know that I appreciate your viewership. Thanks for watching, and keep writing.